Hey, I'm Jim Weber in the Fox 13 Weather Center. Thanks for logging on to myfoxhurricane.com. So, yeah, we continue to watch Hurricane Dorian very closely. Hurricane reconnaissance plane, they've been flying in it throughout the morning. What they've seen is the pressure has actually been fluctuating in the storm, but they've also noticed over the past half an hour or so, what we're actually seeing is the eye is becoming much more evident, not only in satellite, but in radar. It's been clearing itself out. So really, this storm, it's getting really well organized. You can still see some light wind shear over this system. Interesting view here. If you look to the southwest, what you're actually seeing right here is that upper level low, and then to the north of it, we've got the ridge. So what you're actually seeing is some of these cloud tops are being drawn on towards the west. And so we're already seeing signs that it appears that this turn, it's starting with the storm as it is being pulled on towards the west between the ridge to the north and the upper level low, which is sitting to its southwest. This upper level low, by the way, will be continuing to what we call retrograde. It's going to be moving away from the storm. So these are the players that are in place right now, but what's going to happen as we go through the next several days is that ridge to the north. The key to it is how strong that ridge is, or how weak the weakness that will eventually develop on the western side of it will allow this storm to turn. So how all this plays out, that's going to determine the eventual outcome of what Dorian does. But as of 11 a.m., 24.5 degrees north, 69.8 west. Top winds still holding right at 110 miles an hour, but it's continuing to move into an environment where the wind shear is going to drop down. There's plenty of warm water in place, so conditions are favorable that we're just going to continue to see an intensifying storm, and you'll see that pressure currently sitting at 972 millibars. So forecast track really hasn't changed all that much through the overnight hours and into this morning. We're still talking about a Category 4 hurricane working its way towards the state, and then right as it approaches the state, it just slows down, and then it's going to drift basically towards the state, potentially making landfall down across, say, somewhere along the southeastern coast of the state, and then making that turn towards the weakness in the ridge. Now, that's the key to all this at this point, is when that turn happens. Does it happen earlier or later? The slower that this moves, the more potential that it has to make that turn more towards the east coast, or maybe even before it makes landfall. So yes, this graphic shows a landfall at this point, but that's not set in stone. I think everybody has caught on here over the past several days. Nothing's set in stone, and this forecast may be good for 6 hours because things could be changing as we go through the day. But we've got that tight clustering of the computer models. We're getting more and more just really solid agreement with the computer models in that short term, and starting to get more agreement in the longer terms, but it's the details. When I say the details, when we look at some of the computer models, the GFS and the European, they're coming into, in some cases, dead on agreement, but then when they disagree, they're not disagreeing by a huge amount. We're talking 50, 75 miles, but remember, the width of the state, it's about 140, 150 miles, so 75-mile difference can make a huge difference of what we see across the state. So there's the high to the north, there's the upper level low, which is sitting over Cuba, which will continue to work its way away, and then notice there is that weakness that it is eventually going to be heading towards. It's just a matter of when this high shifts on towards the east a bit more, that weakness is actually going to be more in a location right through here. So that's going to allow this storm to either do something like this, something in this range. So that's where we have to time all this out and really get an idea of how strong that high is to the north. So here's the European and the GFS, and you can see as we go through time, they are basically locked onto each other all the way basically through Monday. So we've got fantastic agreement between our major computer models, and then that's where you start to see these little differences in the models. The GFS more towards the western side of the state, the European more towards the right-hand side. But again, we're not talking about huge differences here, 75 miles at this point, but that makes all the difference in the world. So This can be a wait and see, and we just continue to refine this forecast as we go through the next several days. We'll keep you updated right here on myfoxhurricane.com for the very latest on what's happening with Dorian.